I woke up bald at my daughter's wedding, but that wasn't the biggest shock of the day. The room was quiet, too quiet. As I opened my eyes, the first thing I noticed wasn't the crisp white of the wedding dress hanging on the door or the smell of fresh roses in the air. It was the strange, cold feeling on my head. I reached up instinctively, my fingers brushing over smooth, bare skin where my hair used to be. My breath caught in my throat. I had no idea how it had happened, but I knew it wasn't right. This wasn't a bad dream. I wasn't just imagining it. I had woken up bald on the day that was supposed to be the happiest of my life, my daughter's wedding day. The chaos of the morning began to creep in, the sound of guests gathering outside, the excitement, the joy, the laughter. But inside, I felt like I was frozen in place. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, looking at myself, trying to make sense of it all. How could this be happening? What had gone wrong? I couldn't show my daughter, not like this. She deserved a perfect day, and I couldn't ruin it. But deep down, something was gnawing at me, something I hadn't expected. There was a deeper reason for my dismay. As I gathered myself together, I realized that this baldness was only the beginning of the surprises waiting for me. My daughter, the center of this beautiful event, had been acting strange all morning. I noticed it in her eyes when she looked at me, an uneasiness, a hint of something that didn't sit right. At first I thought it was just the stress of the day, but then I realized this was different. The tension in the air was thick. Her fiancé, Mark, wasn't much better. He barely acknowledged me, his face tight, like he had something to hide. I didn't understand it. This wasn't just about my hair or the wedding. It was something much bigger. I tried to shake it off, thinking maybe I was overthinking things. I wasn't one to make a scene, especially not on such an important day. I told myself to pull it together, to put on a brave face, to pretend everything was fine. But then, just before the ceremony began, I overheard a conversation that would change everything. I walked into the living room, trying to avoid the full-length mirror, but my reflection was impossible to ignore. I noticed my daughter talking to her maid of honor, whispering urgently, and I couldn't help but overhear a few words. "We're going to have to handle this carefully," she said, her voice low but sharp. My heart skipped a beat. Who was she talking about? And what did she mean by handle it? I stood frozen, my mind racing. Was this about me? Did my daughter know something I didn't? My hands trembled as I held the edge of the couch, trying to steady myself. The weight of the situation, the realization that something was terribly wrong, was finally sinking in. But I couldn't turn back now. I had to face whatever was coming, even if it meant losing the perfect day I had always dreamed of. The moment the wedding ceremony began, I held my breath. The first steps down the aisle were flawless, the perfect picture of happiness. But for me, each step felt heavier than the last. I stood in the back, watching my daughter walk down the aisle, the most beautiful bride, and I knew that this was only the calm before the storm. I had no idea what was about to happen next, but I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. The truth was coming, and it was going to change everything. As the ceremony continued, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. My daughter, Emma, looked radiant walking down the aisle, her face glowing with excitement and happiness, but I couldn't focus on her. My eyes kept darting between her and Mark, her soon-to-be husband, watching their every move. They were too calm, too perfect, and it made my insides twist. I had always prided myself on being a calm presence in the family, the one who kept everything together, but today, the unease I felt was unbearable. The way Emma had looked at me earlier that morning, the coldness in her eyes, the distance between us, it all felt wrong. I had been there for every major moment in her life, and yet today, it seemed like she barely noticed I was even in the room. The vows were exchanged, and I smiled, though it felt like my smile was made of paper, fragile and thin. The reception was next, a grand ballroom filled with flowers and laughter. Yet every laugh, every cheer felt hollow to me, like I was watching from the outside. I didn't belong there. I had always assumed that once Emma got married, things would change, but not like this. I thought I would be proud, content, happy for her, but instead, a pit had formed in my stomach, and I could feel it growing deeper as the night went on. Then came the moment when everything shifted. The moment I would never forget. I had been walking around the ballroom, trying to find a place to sit when I overheard Mark speaking with his best man. "I don't think she knows," Mark said, his voice low but clear enough for me to hear. "I just hope she doesn't cause any problems today." I froze, my hand gripping the edge of the table. My heart pounded in my chest. What was he talking about? Who didn't know? What problems was he expecting? My mind raced, and for a moment, I felt dizzy. This wasn't just about my hair, or Emma's wedding. Something was going on, and I was at the center of it. I couldn't ignore the creeping feeling that had been building inside me since this morning. Mark had always been polite, respectful, but now, there was something else in his tone. Something I hadn't picked up on before. I turned away quickly, my head spinning. I needed to calm down, but I couldn't. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was a certainty. The whispers, the side glances, the strange looks I had gotten all day, they weren't in my head. This was real. I didn't belong here, and my family was about to prove it to me in a way I never expected. As the night wore on, I decided to confront Emma. I couldn't stand it any longer. I had to know what was going on. I found her near the dance floor, laughing with friends, her perfect smile in place. She saw me approach and smiled at first, but the moment she saw the look in my eyes, her smile faltered. "Mom, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with concern, but her eyes didn't match. She was hiding something. I could feel it in my bones. "What's going on, Emma?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why does Mark keep looking at me like that? Why are you so distant?" Emma paused, her gaze flickering to the ground, and then back to me. "You're just imagining things, Mom," she said, her tone a little too sharp. "Everything is fine." But I knew it wasn't. I knew something had changed, and I had to get to the bottom of it. "I'm not imagining things," I said, my voice low, steady, unwavering. "You and Mark, you've been acting so strange today. What's going on?" She looked around, her eyes darting nervously, before she sighed and stepped closer. "Mom, please. Not today. It's our wedding day." Her voice was pleading, but I could tell she was avoiding the question. The truth was slipping away from me, just out of reach. But I wouldn't let it. "No," I said firmly, stepping closer. "I'm not leaving until you tell me the truth." Emma's face softened, but only for a second. She opened her mouth, as if to say something, but then closed it. She hesitated. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "What are you talking about?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. She looked around again, as if checking to see if anyone was listening, and then said the words that changed everything. "I didn't want you to find out, but it's been planned. Mark and I have decided, we're selling the house. It's already been decided. The money from the sale will cover everything, and it's just easier this way." My world spun. My knees went weak, and I felt the blood drain from my face. "What? You're selling the house? Our family home? Why would you do that? What about me? What about—" But Emma cut me off, her expression hardening. "It's for the best, Mom. It's what Mark and I decided. I'm sorry, but we can't keep it." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My family was making decisions without me. They were cutting me out, and they didn't even care. It wasn't just the house. It was everything. I was being pushed aside, just like I had feared all along. I could feel the tears welling up, but I refused to let them fall. I wasn't going to let them see me break. "Not today. I see," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I see exactly what this is." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving my daughter and her new husband standing there, their lies hanging in the air, and the truth crashing down around me. The air was thick with tension as I walked away from Emma and Mark. Every step felt like it was pulling me further from the life I had known, further from the family I thought I could trust. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. The house. My home. They were selling it. They were selling everything, and I had no say in the matter. I felt like I had been cast aside, like a piece of furniture no longer needed. How could they do this to me? I had raised Emma, I had loved her like my own, and this was how she repaid me? I walked through the grand ballroom, the noise and laughter of the wedding guests fading into the background as I processed the words she had just said. The house. The one Noel and I had built together. The one where Emma had grown up. And now, just like that, it was gone. I felt a deep pang in my chest, like something vital had been ripped away from me. The familiar faces around me seemed so distant, so far removed from the pain I was feeling. I tried to focus on the happy couple, on the joy of the day, but it was impossible. I couldn't shake the image of my daughter, the woman I had trusted most, standing there with Mark, telling me they had already made the decision without me. I had been a mother for so long, always putting my family first, always doing what was best for them. And now, I was the one being left behind. My thoughts swirled in a haze, and for a moment, I didn't know what to do. I could feel the tears welling up, but I refused to let them fall. Not now. Not in front of everyone. I had to keep my composure, had to keep my dignity. But inside, I was breaking. I found a quiet corner of the ballroom, away from the festivities, away from the eyes of the guests. I needed to think, to process everything that had happened. How had things gotten so out of control? I had spent my whole life making sure my family was happy, making sure everything was in its place. But now, it felt like all of that was unraveling. I had no control, no say in what was happening. I sat down, my mind racing, and I tried to focus on the details. The house. The sale. The lies. Emma's coldness. Mark's indifference. It was all becoming clear now. They had planned this, made these decisions long before I even knew what was happening. I had been so caught up in the wedding, in the excitement of the day, that I hadn't seen the signs. The subtle shifts, the small changes in their behavior, the way they had distanced themselves from me. I had been blind to it all. But now, the truth was staring me in the face, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to face it, even if it meant losing everything. I stood up, my legs shaky, and I walked back into the main hall. The wedding was still in full swing, the music playing, the laughter echoing, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. I was lost. I didn't know where to go from here, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't let them get away with this. I couldn't let them take everything from me without a fight. I had given so much to this family, to Emma, to Mark, and this was how they treated me? No. I wasn't going to let it end like this. I had to confront them. I had to make them see what they were doing. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I walked toward Emma and Mark, my steps deliberate, my mind made up. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about respect. It was about family. It was about standing up for myself for the first time in a long time. When I reached them, I stopped. They turned to face me, and I saw the look in Emma's eyes, a mix of guilt and defiance. Mark, ever the stoic, didn't seem fazed, but I could see a flicker of something behind his eyes. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was guilt. But it didn't matter. I was done being the passive one in this relationship. I wasn't going to sit back and let them make decisions about my life, my home, my future without me. We need to talk, I said, my voice steady, unwavering. Now. Emma's face faltered for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. Mark just nodded, but I could see the tension in his jaw. They knew this was coming. What's going on, Mom? Emma asked, her voice soft, but there was an edge to it now. What's going on? I repeated, stepping closer to her. You've been making decisions about my life, about my home, without even consulting me. Do you think that's fair? Do you think that's right? I could feel my pulse quickening, the anger bubbling up inside me. This wasn't just about the house. It was about respect, about loyalty, about family. You can't just take everything from me, I continued, my voice rising. You don't get to decide what happens to me. Not without me. Not anymore. I stood there, facing them, the weight of my words settling between us. Emma looked like she was about to say something, but I cut her off. No, I said, holding up my hand. I'm done being silenced. I'm done being treated like I don't matter. This ends now. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something inside me shift. I wasn't powerless anymore. I wasn't invisible. And no matter what happened next, I would fight for what was rightfully mine. I could see the shock in Emma's eyes as I stood my ground. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but the words didn't come. Mark, too, remained silent, watching me with a strange mix of irritation and caution. The ballroom, which had once felt so alive with celebration, now felt suffocating. It was as though the air had thickened, the music a distant hum compared to the pounding in my chest. I had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable in front of my own family. But I wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not when I had finally found my voice. You've taken everything from me, I said again, this time more forcefully. And I won't just stand by and watch it happen. Not anymore. Emma looked away, her gaze flickering toward the crowd, as if seeking a way to escape the confrontation. But there was nowhere to go. Not now. Not after everything that had been said. I could feel her distancing herself from me, but I wasn't going to let her. I wasn't going to let her pretend this was just a misunderstanding. You knew what you were doing, I continued, my voice steady but unwavering. You've been planning this for months, and now you want me to just accept it? Emma opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her face flushed, and I could see the conflict in her eyes. But I wasn't done. I raised you, I said, the words sharp and deliberate. I loved you. And this is how you repay me? I looked at Mark then, his expression unreadable, but I saw something in his eyes, guilt, perhaps, or maybe regret. But it didn't matter. The damage had already been done. I don't care about the house, I said, my voice softer now, but no less firm. What I care about is how you've treated me. How you've treated your family. Emma's shoulders slumped, and for a moment, I thought she might finally speak the truth. But instead she shook her head. It's not like that, Mom, she said, her voice small, defensive. You don't understand. Don't understand? I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Don't understand? You've made it crystal clear, Emma. You've made it clear that I'm nothing more than a burden to you. That I don't matter anymore. The silence that followed was deafening. The noise of the wedding party faded into the background, and all I could hear was the sound of my own breathing. No, Mom, Emma said finally, her voice cracking. That's not true. I never meant to hurt you. But I could see it in her eyes. The distance. The coldness. It was there all along, buried beneath the surface. I had just been too blind to see it. I don't want to hear your excuses, I said, turning away from her. I've had enough. This wedding, this day, it's all been about you, about Mark, about everyone but me. I shook my head, the weight of the betrayal settling heavy in my chest. I thought I was going to be part of your life forever, Emma, I said quietly, almost to myself. But now I see I was wrong. Mark stepped forward then, as if trying to break the tension. Susan, please, he said, his voice calm but insistent. This isn't the time or place. I looked at him, the man who had been so sweet and respectful when I first met him, the man who had promised to love and care for my daughter. Now I saw him differently. I saw the manipulation, the subtle push to get what they wanted. The time is now, Mark, I said, my voice cool and steady. I'm done being polite. I'm done pretending everything is okay. I turned back to Emma, who was standing there, her face a mix of confusion and regret. But I wasn't going to let her off the hook. Not this time. You don't get to walk away from this, Emma, I said, my words cutting through the silence. You don't get to ignore what you've done. You've chosen Mark, you've chosen the life you want, and that's fine. But don't expect me to just sit here and pretend like everything is okay. Emma swallowed hard, her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't back down. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, I continued. But I'm done being the woman you think you can push around. I deserve more than this. With that, I turned and walked away from them, from the wedding, from the family that no longer felt like my own. My heart was heavy with the weight of everything I had just learned, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them take everything from me, not my dignity, not my worth. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't going to be ignored, not by them, and not by anyone. I walked out of the ballroom, my heart pounding in my chest, every step feeling heavier than the last. I had left my family behind, but I wasn't leaving without a fight. I had been pushed to the edge for so long, and now, finally, I had spoken up. I hadn't realized how much I had been holding in until the words came spilling out. The betrayal, the lies, the cold distance that had grown between me and Emma, all of it had finally surfaced. But even as I walked away, the feeling of being abandoned clung to me like a second skin. The pain of it was too fresh, too raw. I couldn't just forget about it. I made my way to the garden, seeking a quiet space to clear my head. The night air was cool against my skin, but the warmth of the tears I had been holding back made it feel suffocating. I leaned against the stone wall, trying to catch my breath. The wedding was still going on inside, but I felt like I had stepped into a completely different world. My world had crumbled, and all the pretense of celebration felt hollow now. I had always been the strong one, the pillar in the family, the one who kept things together. But now, I wasn't sure of who I was anymore. I had spent so many years supporting Emma, Mark, and the rest of the family, and this was how they treated me? Like I was disposable? The anger still bubbled inside me, but there was also a deep sadness. I had given them everything, and in return, they had given me nothing but coldness. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I needed to think. I needed to figure out what to do next. I couldn't just walk away and pretend like nothing had happened. I couldn't let Emma and Mark get away with it. But what was I supposed to do? I didn't have the strength to fight this alone. Just as I was about to turn and head back inside, I heard a voice calling my name. I turned to see my sister, Ruth, walking toward me. She had always been there for me, a constant in my life, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "Susan," she said softly, her voice filled with concern. "What's going on? I saw you leave. Is everything okay?" I shook my head, trying to hold back the tears. "No, Ruth," I said, my voice cracking. "Nothing is okay." Ruth stepped closer, her arms opening as if she were ready to embrace me. "Come on, let's sit down," she said gently. "You don't have to go through this alone." We found a quiet bench under a large oak tree, away from the noise of the party. I sat down, my hands shaking, and Ruth sat beside me, her presence comforting but too quiet. "What happened, Susan?" she asked softly, her eyes filled with concern. I hesitated for a moment, not sure where to start. How could I explain the hurt I felt, the betrayal that had cut so deep? But as I looked at Ruth, I realized she was the one person who wouldn't judge me. She had always been on my side, no matter what. "I found out they're selling the house," I said, my voice trembling. "They're selling everything, and they didn't even ask me. Emma, she just told me, like it was nothing." Ruth's face softened with understanding. "Oh, Susan," she whispered, placing her hand gently on mine. "I'm so sorry." The tears I had been holding back finally fell, and I didn't try to stop them. It wasn't just about the house, it was everything. It was the years I had spent raising Emma, loving her like my own, only to be discarded when she no longer needed me. I had spent so much of my life putting others first, and now, I was the one left in the dark. "How could they do this to me, Ruth?" I asked, my voice broken. "I gave them everything. I gave Emma everything. And this is how she treats me?" Ruth didn't speak right away, but her hand remained on mine, steady and warm. After a few moments, she spoke softly. "You've always been there for her, Susan. But sometimes, people change, and they forget the people who have always been there for them. Emma, she's trying to build her own life now. And maybe she doesn't realize the damage she's doing to you. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand, trying to pull myself together. Ruth's words were comforting, but they didn't erase the pain. I don't know what to do, I said quietly. I can't keep living like this, Ruth. I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. Ruth nodded. You don't have to pretend, Susan. But you also don't have to let them walk all over you. You've got to stand up for yourself. Her words hit me like a wake-up call. I had spent so many years putting everyone else first, sacrificing my own needs for the sake of my family. But now, I realized, it was time to stop. It was time to take back my life. I looked at Ruth, my sister, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of clarity. You're right, I said, my voice steady. I'm done being the one who always gives. It's time for me to take care of myself. Ruth smiled softly, squeezing my hand. I'm proud of you, Susan. It's about time you put yourself first. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything I had just learned still heavy in the air. But I knew that whatever happened next, I wouldn't be facing it alone. I had my sister, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a chance to rebuild, to reclaim the life I had lost. I woke up the next morning feeling like a different person. The previous day's events, the confrontation, the bitter realization that Emma and Mark had betrayed me, still lingered in the air. I could feel it in every part of my body, the exhaustion, the weight of the truth settling over me. I had done what I needed to do, but now I had to deal with the aftermath. I had no idea what would happen next, but I knew I couldn't go back to the way things were. I couldn't just pretend everything was fine anymore. The house was still standing, my home, the place that had seen me through so much. But in that moment, it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a place I had to leave behind. I spent the morning pacing around, the house too quiet, the walls too close. I needed to make decisions, to figure out what my next steps would be. I needed to regain control of my life. The first thing I did was call Ruth. She had been the only one who understood, the only one who hadn't abandoned me. Susan, how are you doing? Ruth's voice on the other end of the phone brought me some comfort. I'm still processing everything, I said, sitting down at the kitchen table. I'm not sure what to do, Ruth. It feels like everything is falling apart. Take your time, she said. You don't need to have all the answers right now. Just take a breath and figure out what you want. You've done so much for everyone else, now it's time to do something for you. Her words settled into me like a bomb. I didn't have to fix everything at once. I just had to take it step by step. After our call, I walked around the house, taking it all in. The living room, once so warm with laughter and life, now felt empty. The pictures on the walls, the furniture, the little things Noel and I had collected over the years, all of it felt like a lifetime ago. I could almost hear his voice, his laughter, echoing through the rooms. The pain of losing him was still sharp, and now, with everything that had happened with Emma and Mark, it felt like I had lost my place in the world altogether. But as I stood there, I realized something. I had been given a second chance. A chance to start over, to take back my life. I wasn't just going to roll over and let them take everything from me. I wasn't going to let Emma and Mark think they could push me around any longer. I was stronger than that. I had always been the one who held everything together, the one who made sure everyone was okay. But now, it was my turn. I knew what I needed to do. The first step was obvious. I wasn't going to stay in this house, in this place that had become a symbol of everything I had lost. It was time for a change. I needed to move on, to start fresh. But that didn't mean I was going to let Emma and Mark take the house, take everything that was rightfully mine. I called a lawyer that afternoon. I wasn't sure what I was going to do yet, but I had to make sure I was protecting myself. I had to make sure they didn't get away with this. The lawyer was kind, professional. She listened to my story and assured me that I had legal rights. That was a relief, but also a wake-up call. I had spent so long focusing on my family, on Emma, on Mark, that I had forgotten about myself. I had forgotten about the person I used to be before all of this started, before the betrayal, before the distance, before the pain. As I sat in that lawyer's office, I made a promise to myself. I was going to fight for what was mine. I wasn't going to back down. No more playing the role of the quiet, passive mother. No more pretending everything was fine. I was going to reclaim my life. After the meeting, I felt a sense of clarity, a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I walked out of the office with my head held high, the weight of the past still there, but lighter than before. The path ahead wasn't going to be easy, and I didn't know what the future held. But I was ready to face it. I was ready to take control of my life again, to show Emma, to show Mark, that I wasn't someone they could just push aside. I was more than that. I was Susan Miller, and I wasn't done yet. I didn't expect what happened next. After meeting with the lawyer, I felt a new sense of determination stirring inside me. I knew I had to act fast, but there was no way I was going to be rash. I had to plan, to make sure I was doing this the right way. The days that followed were filled with a quiet, simmering intensity. I went through the motions of everyday life, keeping up appearances, attending to the little details of my house, but inside, I was a storm, brewing with everything I had kept buried for so long. I couldn't ignore the pain, but I also couldn't let it control me anymore. I was reclaiming my life. The next step was simple but crucial. I had to confront Emma again. I knew she would be difficult, defensive even, but I had made my decision. No more avoiding the truth. No more pretending everything was okay. The day I decided to face her, I knew I had to be strong. I couldn't let my emotions overtake me. I didn't want to break down in front of her again. When I arrived at her house, the one that would soon be marked with a sold sign, I took a moment to steady myself. I needed to be clear, composed, and in control. As I stood on her doorstep, I could hear laughter from inside, the sound of family, friends, and all the things I once thought would always be there. But today, it all felt like a world I no longer belonged to. Emma answered the door, her face lighting up with that same false smile she had worn at the wedding. But I wasn't fooled. "Mom," she said, stepping aside to let me in. I noticed she hesitated, like she wasn't sure whether I'd step inside or turn away. But I wasn't here to make small talk. I wasn't here to pretend everything was fine. "Emma," I said as I walked in. My voice was steady but cold, and I could see the shift in her expression. "We need to talk." She closed the door behind me, her hands clasped together nervously. I could see the unease in her eyes. She knew what was coming. "What's going on, Mom?" she asked, though her voice lacked the warmth it once held. It was like she was keeping me at arm's length. "What's going on is that I'm done pretending," I said, cutting straight to the point. "I wasn't going to dance around this anymore. I'm done letting you walk all over me. You've taken enough from me, Emma. The house, the respect, the love I've always given you. I can't just sit back and let it all slip away anymore." Her face faltered for a moment, and I saw something, was it guilt, flash in her eyes. But it quickly disappeared. "Mom, please," she started, but I wasn't going to let her continue. "No, Emma," I interrupted, holding my hand up. "You don't get to keep brushing me off like this. I'm your mother. I've spent my life making sure you were taken care of, and this is how you repay me?" She took a step back, looking away from me, her hands trembling slightly. I could tell she was struggling with something, but I couldn't be patient anymore. I wasn't going to wait for her to come around. "You and Mark," I said, my voice a little softer now, but still firm, "have been making decisions for both of us, without even telling me. You think I don't see it, but I do. I see everything. I've seen the way you've been treating me, the way you push me aside. I'm not going to let you do it anymore." Emma's eyes welled up, and for a moment, I thought she might finally break, might apologize, might try to explain everything. But instead, she shook her head. "I never wanted to hurt you, Mom," she said quietly. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "Then why did you let it?" I asked, stepping closer to her. "Why did you let it go this far?" She looked down, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know, she said, her words tinged with regret. I thought it would be easier this way. I thought we could move on without all the pain. I swallowed hard. The pain was still there, gnawing at me. But I realized, in that moment, that it didn't have to define me anymore. It's not easy, Emma, I said, my voice cracking slightly. But that doesn't mean we should just ignore it. We have to face it, no matter how hard it is. She took a deep breath, her shoulders slumping as if a heavy weight was lifting off them. I know, Mom, she whispered. I know I've hurt you, and I can't undo that. But I want to fix things. I want to make it right. I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in a long while. For a moment I saw the girl I had raised, the girl I had loved. And in that moment I knew that no matter what happened, I wasn't going to lose her. We were going to get through this. Together. We'll figure it out, Emma, I said, my voice steady again. But I need you to understand something. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to let you push me aside anymore. We're family, and we'll work through this. But you have to meet me halfway. She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. For the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, there was hope. Maybe it wasn't too late to fix what had been broken. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable now. It was filled with the unspoken understanding that things could change. That they would change. I turned to leave, my heart lighter than it had been in days. As I stepped outside, I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the right path. I woke up the next morning, the cool light of dawn filtering through the curtains, and for a moment, I didn't want to face the day. I had spent so many years trying to keep everything together for my family, and now, it felt like it was all slipping through my fingers. The fight with Emma, the decisions they had made without me, it all weighed heavily on my mind. But I wasn't going to let it define me. I wasn't going to let it break me. I had made my decision. It was time to start fresh, to take control of my life again. I took a deep breath and pushed myself out of bed, the quiet of the morning giving me space to think. I didn't know where to begin, but I knew I couldn't just keep living in the shadows of my past. I had to move forward. I grabbed my phone and dialed Ruth's number. I needed her support, now more than ever. Susan, she said when she answered, her voice calm and reassuring, how are you doing? I could hear the concern in her voice, but I also knew she had faith in me. I'm okay, I said, trying to sound more certain than I felt. But I've made up my mind, Ruth. I'm going to take control of my life. I'm not going to let them do this to me anymore. Ruth was silent for a moment, letting my words sink in. Then she spoke, her voice soft but firm. I'm proud of you, Susan. It's time for you to take back what's yours. We talked for a little longer, and I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders with each word of encouragement she gave me. After we hung up, I felt a new sense of clarity. I wasn't going to let fear or guilt hold me back anymore. I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine. The first thing I did was start looking into my options. I called the lawyer again, asking about my rights, my options regarding the house, and how I could protect myself moving forward. She was helpful, patient, and gave me a plan of action that felt like a lifeline. I took notes, I made calls, and slowly but surely, I began to see a way forward. I didn't need to rely on Emma and Mark to decide my future. I could make my own decisions, take control of my own life. But it wasn't going to be easy. I had to face the reality of what had happened, face the pain of the betrayal, and find a way to move beyond it. I spent the next few days in a whirlwind of activity. I started looking for a new place to live. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I was determined. I wasn't going to stay in the house where I had been hurt so badly. I wanted a fresh start. I wanted to find a place where I could breathe again, a place where I could rebuild my life on my own terms. I found a small apartment on the edge of town. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It was the first step toward my new beginning. I signed the lease the next day, feeling a sense of relief I hadn't felt in a long time. It was the start of something new, something I could control. The weeks that followed were a blur of packing, organizing, and saying goodbye to the life I had known. It wasn't easy. I had spent so many years making that house a home, filling it with memories of my family, of my life with Noel. But I had to let go. I couldn't keep holding on to a place that no longer felt like home. The day I moved into the apartment, I felt a mix of emotions. There was sadness, yes, but there was also a sense of freedom. I was finally free to live for myself, to create a space that was truly mine. I wasn't living in the shadow of anyone else anymore. I was taking control of my life, one step at a time. I had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. And that was a feeling I hadn't experienced in years. As I settled into my new apartment, I took a deep breath and looked around. It was small, but it was mine. And that made all the difference. I could already feel a new chapter beginning, a chapter where I was in control of my own story. I knew there would still be challenges ahead, that things wouldn't always be easy, but I was ready to face them. I wasn't the same woman who had walked out of Emma's house in tears. I was stronger now, wiser, and more determined than ever. I had found my voice, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me again. I spent the next few weeks settling into my new apartment, the quiet hum of the city outside my window a constant reminder that I was no longer a part of the life I had once known. At first, I had trouble adjusting. The silence was deafening, the emptiness of the apartment a stark contrast to the life I had once shared with my family. But slowly, the walls of the small apartment began to feel like mine. The bare furniture, the simple decorations, all felt like a fresh start. I began to make small changes, adding personal touches that made the place feel like home. It was nothing grand, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. I had my own space, my own life, and I wasn't constantly walking on eggshells, afraid of what might happen next. But even as I found peace in the solitude, the question of what to do next hung over me. I had made the decision to leave Emma and Mark behind, but what did that mean for my future? What would my life look like now, without them? I had spent so many years defined by my role as a mother, a wife, a caretaker. But now, I wasn't sure of who I was without those titles. I spent time reflecting, thinking about what I wanted, what I needed, and what I could do next. It wasn't easy. There were days when I felt lost, unsure of where I was headed. But there were also moments of clarity, moments when I realized that I was not done yet. I had so much more to offer. I began to explore new hobbies, things I had never had time for when I was so focused on everyone else. I started painting again, something I hadn't done in years. I joined a local book club, something I had always wanted to do but never found the time for. Slowly, I began to rediscover parts of myself that had been buried for so long. I wasn't just a mother, a wife, or a caregiver anymore. I was Susan, and I was learning to live for myself. But even as I embraced this new chapter in my life, there was still a part of me that missed the family I had lost. I missed Emma, despite everything. I missed the girl who used to run to me for comfort, the girl who used to look at me with love and admiration. I didn't know if things would ever go back to the way they were, but I had to accept that the past was behind me. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was the only way forward. As time passed, I began to rebuild my relationship with Emma. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy, but it was a start. We had long, honest conversations about everything that had happened, and though there were still moments of tension, there was also understanding. I didn't expect things to be fixed overnight, but we were taking the first steps toward healing. I wasn't asking for everything to be the same again. I just wanted to be seen, to be heard, and to know that I mattered. Slowly but surely, Emma began to come around. It wasn't the same as it used to be, but it was better. And that was enough for me. The road to healing was long, and there were still moments when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I had made the right choices. But each day, I felt a little stronger, a little more sure of who I was and what I wanted. The pain didn't disappear, but it became something I could manage. I learned to live with it, to accept it as part of my story. I was no longer defined by the actions of others, by the choices they had made for me. I was writing my own story now, and I was taking control of my own life. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. I didn't know what it held, but I was ready to face it, ready to move forward with my head held high. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I wasn't walking it alone. I had myself, I had Ruth, and I had the strength I had found within me. And that was enough. As I looked around my new apartment, I realized that this was only the beginning. I didn't have all the answers, but I had the courage to keep going, to keep moving forward. And that was all I needed.